Next item on the agenda is the Commission General Regulation 373, LSB file R11009. Mark.
For the record, Mark Warren, Chief of Fisheries. I have to apologize and go back to the crayfish issue. I forgot to bring up one thing. Warden Cameron and I were going over the actual change yesterday in the back of your packet, and it refers to NAC 503.90, and there was just a typo, and so 503.590 actually refers to Lake Mead, so it's actually 503.580. So for that, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
On 373, we're asking the Commission to adopt a regulation relating to wildlife management areas, providing that only vessels without motors may be used during certain periods on the Dacey Reservoir in Wayne Kirch Wildlife Management Area, and revising certain other provisions governing the use of the Dacey Reservoir. And if you, for those of you that were present in the September meeting in Las Vegas, we passed a regulation that would only allow one trout to be taken at Dacey Reservoir, and we're attempting to develop that into a trophy fishery. Upon talking to the manager at Kirch, he had some other suggestions to kind of open up Dacey. Presently, there are 5 reservoirs in the Wayne Kirch Wildlife Management Area. Dacey is one of them. The other ones are Adams McGill, Hay Meadow, Cold Springs, and sometimes Thule if it gets enough water. It's at the tail end of the system. Adams McGill, Hay Meadow, and Cold Springs presently are open year-round, but in the springtime, due to waterfowl nesting, the upper area is closed to trespass, so it's buoyed. And the supervisor out there suggested that we do the same thing to Dacey. So it would have buoys and be open year-round, but you couldn't go to the upper end until after, from August 16th on. And in lieu of that, we talked about boats, and he agreed that boats would not be a problem as long as there were boats without motors during the first part of the season. So you can get on there if you pass this regulation and use boat, pontoon boat, paddle boat, canoe, or anything to go fishing. And he didn't want motors because of the problem with young waterfowl. So after August 16th, you will be able to go on it with a motor, with a boat with a motor. So those are the two things you'll be voting on, to open it up in the spring with the upper half closed to trespass, and then allowing motors. It's the first time we've ever had such a regulation, to have boats without motors for part of the year, and then boats with motors for the remainder of the year.
Any other comments by commissioners? Commissioner Rain?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had some questions on that. Now, so we are opening it to fishing year-round then?
Correct. It's now closed the first part of the year,
Yeah.
and then August 16th, it opens, presently, it opens up and is open to fishing till the...
So we're wanting to open it up the other half of the year as
Right.
well, but that's not in this regulation?
It's the one, it's in the regulation you'll be voting on.
So I didn't see, maybe I'm missing something here, about where it would actually authorize fishing. I mean, I see access for boats, but if you have access for boats, then therefore you can fish as well? It's open not only to boats, but to fishing? I was looking for that, saying it's open to boats, and yeah, you can fish too. You know what I'm talking about?
I see what you mean. Yes, on the left, it talks about the boats.
Okay.
On the left side of the sport material. And then on the right side, it talks about which reservoirs are closed to trespass. And it doesn't mention fishing, but it's kind of,
Okay, so if it's open to boats, it's open to fishing. That was the question.
if it's open to trespass, then it's open to fishing, yes.
Okay. And when it comes to public comment, I had a letter from some.
Are you
Any
good?
other commissioner comments? If not, I'll ask if there's any public comment on this proposed regulation. If none, I'll bring it back and
public
go to
comment.
Commissioner Rain.
This is a public comment. I'd mentioned earlier under correspondence, I had a letter from a James Breitrick. He's a retired miner and avid fisherman. He said, thank you for asking for input. Board of Wildlife Commissioners, dear sirs, thank you for asking input. In your proposed regulation change, it's not clear from the language if the proposal includes opening Dacey Reservoir year-round or opening it rear-round and restricting boats with motors from February 15th through August 15th, or year-round restriction to no motors. If the changes are open, the changes are to open the waters to access year-round, there will of course be more pressure on the bass, trout, and migratory birds, but limiting access to boats without motors will effectively negate a lot of that pressure because of the existing limited access. Shallow boat launches and subaquatic weed growth. I've been fishing, hunting, camping, and swimming yearly vacations and taking my yearly vacations at Wayne and Kirch for 50 years now, and my children are now teaching their own at the same place as I learned. In my opinion, the fisheries in this management area have steadily improved over the last 10 to 20 years with very little change in the regulation. Although when I was young, the bass limit was 15 daily, in parentheses. I have been in recent contact with a couple dozen sportsmen from a diverse background that enjoying spending time at Kirch Wildlife Management Area, and all I have contact agree with the recent change to artificial lures only on Dacey Reservoir, and agree that limiting access to this reservoir to boats without motors would not be detrimental, as there are plenty of other accessible waters as long as the access gate at the upper end of the reservoir is kept unlocked. And just deciding that, it specified that there's a lot of issues with boats without motors. If you didn't keep this gate unlocked, boats without motors have to go a long ways down a long channel. It makes it very difficult. So if you keep the gates unlocked, request. There is some concern about too much pressure because this reservoir does not have a permanent throughput of water, and also some rumors of micromanaging this fishery to make it a trophy pond for special interests. One other point that was of interest is that the sportsmen are all amenable to the cattle grazing, as it keeps the vegetation down and may help keep the water level up. Appreciatively, James A. Breitrick, and interested sportsman. That's Suzanne, please.
Okay, well, I'm guessing that the gate's locked because the reservoir is now closed for half the year. So I can check in on that and get back to you, but it's, I'm just guessing they just keep it locked, and then on August 16th, when it opens up, they open it up. So if you approve it to be open year-round, I'm sure they'll unlock the gate to let people in there to fish. We had a lot of dialogue back and forth between Fisheries and Habitat, the manager out there, and we wouldn't do anything if it interfered with the waterfowl nesting, but he felt that we could open up the lower end without hurting the duck and goose nesting, and as long as we left the regulation, we adopted the regulation for no motors. We went back and forth between letting them on with electric motors or not, that you can't go that fast, and it just went back and forth between us, and he was fairly adamant about wanting no motors. So I mean, you can't have a giant boat. Well, you can, but it's really hard to paddle around. So it'd be smaller units, float tubes, canoes, and whatnot, and it wouldn't harass the wildlife. So that's why we kind of asked to adopt this kind of weird regulation, which is half and half. We don't have any other ones like that. But it's kind of geared specifically for Dacey, and that and they felt that it could be passed, open it up a little bit for additional fishing, additional time of year, and not hurt the resource. So that was our call.
Any other questions from the Commissioner? Mark? If not, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Just stay there.
All right.